Easier to learn than cross-country skiing and more stable for hiking. And it's just plain fun. We'll show you how to extend your backpacking season to 12 months a year on Oregon Field Guide, Thursday night at 8:30.
Funding for this evening's broadcast of MacNeil Lehrer has been provided by Norm Thompson Outfitters, Oregon's escape from the ordinary for apparel and gifts. Norm Thompson, located at the airport and in Northwest Portland. And by PACC Health Plans. In the forefront of managed health care, PACC offers a wide range of solutions for businesses, both large and small.
Good evening. I'm Robert MacNeil in New York.
And I'm Roger Mudd in Washington. After our summary of the news this Wednesday, we look first at the budget battle in the House of Representatives through the eyes of 5 freshman members. Then correspondent Tom Bearden reports on how the airline industry has been dealing with turbulent financial times. And we close with a report on some young black tennis stars.
Funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by PepsiCo. Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the NewsHour is also provided by AT&T and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
President Clinton continued lobbying House Democrats today to vote for his budget. A crucial vote is scheduled in the House tomorrow. He met with the Congressional Black Caucus this morning and spoke with other members by phone throughout the day. He said his budget was the most balanced and fair program proposed to date. Reporters asked what he was telling those Democrats who seemed nervous about voting for tax increases.
All the evidence shows that the more people know about the details of the package, the more likely they are to support it. And that if it becomes a rhetorical battle where anyone says it's tax and spend, well, who's for that? Nobody's for that. But the American people are for bringing this deficit down. They are for investing in jobs and technology. They are for a fairer tax system that asks everyone to pay their fair share. And they are for a system that moves people from welfare to work. And this program does all those things. It is a very good program.
Democratic leaders in the House are not expecting any of the 176 Republicans to vote for the president's plan. Republicans continue today to criticize key parts of it, particularly the so-called BTU or energy tax. This afternoon, House GOP leaders put on a rally outside the Capitol to voice their opposition again.
It should be said over and over again that this is the largest tax increase in the history of the human race, with no net spending reductions in the first 2 years. Taxes that go into place immediately or retroactively in many cases to the beginning of January, with 0 net spending increases in the first 2 years.
They're probably 30 votes down. I think they're muscling and twisting arms as hard as they can, but I think the problem they face is that with every passing hour, more Americans are calling and telegraphing and faxing their congressmen, and so there's sort of a balance of pressure between America and Washington in terms of what's going to happen. I think it will be very close, and I think as of right now, they don't have the votes.
We'll have more about Congress and the Clinton economic plan right after the news summary. Many of the nation's top economists doubt President Clinton will reach his goal for deficit cutting. A poll by the National Association of Business Economists released today showed on the average, forecasters predict only a $60 billion will be cut over 5 years. The president's aim is to cut $500 billion in 5 years. Robin?
The leader of Bosnia Serbs today denounced the newly created War Crimes Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Radovan Karadzic, who's himself been accused of war crimes, said he would not cooperate with the tribunal because it unfairly singled out the Yugoslav people. The UN Security Council voted unanimously last night to set up the 11-judge court in the Netherlands. U.S. Ambassador Madeleine Albright admitted it would be difficult to bring suspects to trial, but she said indictments issued by the tribunal would make suspects international pariahs. She spoke after the vote.
We must ensure that the voices of the groups most victimized are heard by the tribunal. I refer particularly to the detention and systematic rape of women and girls, often followed by cold-blooded murder. Let the tens of thousands of women and girls who courageously survived the brutal assault of cowards who call themselves soldiers know this. Your dignity survives, as does that of those who died.
The Bosnian safe haven plan won only lukewarm support today from NATO. Defense officials of the alliance wrapped up a two-day meeting in Brussels with a request for more details on the plan before committing troops to enforce it. The plan would set up international protection for 6 Muslim enclaves in Bosnia. Some NATO members were critical of it, saying it would legitimize Serb territorial gains.
German lawmakers today voted to tighten the country's liberal asylum law, effectively closing the door to hundreds of thousands of refugees. Earlier in the day, angry pro-refugee demonstrators clashed with police in Bonn and tried to blockade the German parliament building. But lawmakers used ferry boats and helicopters to slip through the blockade. The new asylum measure becomes law July 1st.
Elections continued in Cambodia today as the Khmer Rouge suffered a pair of setbacks. Prince Norodom Sihanouk dropped his pledge to include the Khmer in any future government. Also today, voters inside Khmer territory defied the group's earlier threats of violence and cast ballots in the elections. We have a report narrated by Louise Bates of Worldwide Television News.
More than 85% of Cambodians have already turned out to vote in the UN-sponsored elections. And as the peacekeepers move mobile booths into Khmer Rouge-held territory, thousands more added their votes. Despite threats to disrupt the elections, the guerrilla group has done little to dissuade Cambodians from casting their ballots. Many villagers have trekked miles to the polling booths, braving minefields, a reminder of the time the Khmer Rouge ruled the country in a reign of terror. The guerrilla group is refusing to take part in the ballot, but UN officials are uncertain why it stopped short of more wide-ranging violence. An invitation to the Khmer Rouge to join the future government has now been withdrawn. Unless the new parliament votes to include it, the group will find itself with no representation. That fact, and the significant turnout in Khmer Rouge-held regions, is a major setback for the group, which caused the deaths of 1.5 million people in the mid-70s. In the capital Phnom Penh, the building destined to be the symbol of the new democracy is in a much-needed state of repair. The major conference hall is an empty shell. The seats of power are covered in dust. The library still houses communist propaganda, but getting the building ready will be the easiest step in Cambodia's struggle for democracy.
The Chinese government today freed Zhu Wenli, one of its longest-held political prisoners. Zhu was reunited with his daughter after his release from a Beijing prison where he served 12 years, 11 of them in solitary confinement. Zhu, a former editor, was arrested in 1981 in a crackdown on pro-democracy dissidents. His release came as the Clinton administration neared a deadline on whether to renew China's favorable trade status.
The president of Guatemala, Jorge Serrano, said today his people were happy about his decision to impose emergency rule. Yesterday, he dissolved Congress and the Supreme Court and placed the leaders of both under house arrest. Today, he censored the press. Serrano said he acted to quell weeks of riots against his economic policies and to fight corruption and drug trafficking. The country's constitutional court ruled today that his moves were illegal. That's it for the news summary. Still ahead on the News Hour, the down-to-the-wire budget battle, turbulence in the airline industry, and black tennis stars. The president's deficit reduction plan is first tonight. The House of Representatives is scheduled to vote tomorrow on the $500 billion five-year package of spending cuts and tax increases. But it faces stiff opposition, not only from the Republicans, but from also within the president's own party. We'll hear from 5 freshman House members, but first, congressional correspondent Kwame Holman has this report on the all-out lobbying effort by the president.
At the White House yesterday, the president lobbied House Democrats full bore to pass the taxes, new spending, and budget cuts of his economic plan. But outside, reporters were chasing the White House travel office story, which even Democrats admit may be harming the president when he needs all his prestige to pull off a win in tomorrow's crucial House vote. The Speaker of the House admonished the press.
There are a lot of efforts to divert attention here. There are efforts that come from various quarters and various purposes. They do not want to see this economic program go forward, many people, because it is a program in the interest of the American people, in the interest of moving the economy forward, and there are a lot of diversionary tactics abroad to try to weaken or distort or divert attention from that.
The president continued that theme this morning in a meeting with black members of the House. He was asked about reports he doesn't yet have the votes to win because of members' discomfort with the plan, especially his energy tax called the BTU tax.
Costs the average person $1 a month next year, $7 a month the year after, $15 a month the year after for a family, and exempts people with incomes under $30,000. It is a fair, balanced program. It's clearly, of all the things that have been presented, the fairest program. It has significant budget cuts, reduces the size of the federal government by $150,000, leaves some room for investment.
After the meeting, House Black Caucus Chairman Kwesi Mfume acknowledged the president's plan is not a winner yet.
Well, it's going to take a continuation of the effort put forth by this administration to remind members of the House, whether they're new or have been there a while, that you can't duck action, that something has got to be done, and it's got to be done soon. There are some members who would like to avoid a vote on this, but you can't spend half of your life in this institution avoiding tough votes.
Take the tough vote was the message from the Democratic leadership this morning when they called the ranks together to air final concerns about the president's package. Afterward, Sander Levin of Michigan made it clear the president's fate rests with his own party.
Democrats realize we're going to get no help at all from Republicans. In this House, there isn't a single Republican vote. All they have been doing is saying no, no, no. The only answer to the end of gridlock is for Democrats to take the reins in hand, and we're going to do that tomorrow.
What makes you so confident it will pass?
The main reason it's going to pass is because it's the only deficit reduction alternative before us.
House Majority Leader Richard Gephardt said a change in the provision that's holding up the most votes, the BTU tax, is unlikely, and there's pain for all Democrats in a yes vote.
This is hard to do. I think a lot of you wrongly assumed that somehow this was just going to fly through the Congress. I mean, this affects people in remarkable ways. You're talking about Social Security taxes, you're talking about Medicare cuts, you're talking about agriculture cuts, you're talking about taxes on barges in rivers. In my part of the country, you're talking about taxes on factories in the BTU business. It is the hardest vote you'll ever have people to take here.
For Congressman Charles Wilson of Texas, the vote is too hard.
It is a certainty that the BTU tax is going to die in the Senate. And to ask us from the areas that are the most affected by the BTU tax to vote for the BTU tax, knowing that the Senate's going to kill it, just doesn't make sense.
And Wilson says the White House now is telling Energy State Democrats in the House they can vote for the BTU tax because it will be changed in the Senate.
Now the administration's people that are calling to lobby are saying the BTU tax is going to be changed significantly in the Senate. It won't be this onerous to your district.
But party leaders are hoping a compromise being worked on today that would force a review of any over-budget spending will secure for the president enough wavering Democrats to win in a vote tomorrow, even without the votes of a few Energy State members.
Joining us from Capitol Hill now are 5 House members who will be voting tomorrow on the budget plan. They are 5 freshmen who came on the NewsHour back in February after President Clinton unveiled his economic plan. The Democrats are Eva Clayton of North Carolina, Dan Hamburg of California, and Karen Shepard of Utah. The 2 Republicans are Stephen Bullier of Indiana and Henry Bonilla from Texas. It's good to have you back, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you whether you agree with Majority Leader Gephardt's characterization of the vote tomorrow, that it will be the toughest vote you ever cast. Ms. Clayton?
I think it will be. First, I'm a freshman, and this is certainly the toughest vote we've had since I've been here. But I think it's also a tough vote for the senior members as well. But I think in the final analysis, those who care about the country are prepared to take the tough votes. We know we can't have all those things we would like to have, so this would be the time for accountability. Rather, we want to continue the status quo where we vote for a reduction of the deficit. That means, yes, you must invest more. Investment in this case means raising taxes, but it also means spending less money. So you either say, I want to do nothing, or I will take this deficit reduction plan which is before us.
Let me ask each one of you now how, if you would be so kind, to tell me how you're going to vote tomorrow, knowing what you know about the contents of the bill. Let me go first to Ms. Shepard.
I'm going to vote for this bill. I believe it's a choice between passing this Reconciliation Act or literal fiscal oblivion. It is time not to stall. It is time to move forward. It's time to stop engaging in an irresponsible form of procrastination called gridlock. And this is the choice before us. There are many things about it which I don't like, taxes being the biggest one that I don't like. No one has offered us a responsible alternative that doesn't have taxes in it.
How about you, Mr. Bonilla? Have you got a responsible alternative according to...
Well, we've had responsible alternatives being proposed consistently. The rhetoric that comes out of the White House saying that we have not had one is simply not true. We had a budget proposed by John Kasich that a few weeks ago that called for $400 billion in deficit reduction without any taxes. We've had legislation allowing small business to have legislative relief so they can be more productive. We've had all kinds of ideas that we feel, the difference philosophically here is that we as Republicans believe that the strength of our country comes from permanent private sector jobs, but more job creation and not in the private sector and not federal jobs. And I find it interesting, we appeared, as you said here, back in February. My colleague, Ms. Shepard, appeared here with me and said, quote, I will not support this package unless there are $2 in spending cuts for every dollar raised in taxes. And most bipartisan research projects that have looked into this say there's anywhere from $5 to $7 in new taxes for every $1 in deficit reduction. So I wonder what happened since back in February that convinced her to support this plan. This plan is a job killer. It's going to take a tremendous amount of money out of the hands of the working people and the small businesses in this country and put it into big government. And I don't think that's what we need right now.
And how about you, Mr. Hamburg from California?
Well, I'm going to vote for this bill. Of course, it's a hard vote, and we're sent here to make hard votes. It's always difficult to raise taxes, but I think what we're looking at here is fiscal responsibility. And I think it's really interesting to hear my colleague, Mr. Bonilla, and my other colleagues from the other side of the aisle talk about fiscal responsibility. Just today on the floor, they voted for a supplemental, an additional $1.2 billion for the Department of Defense, money that was not even asked for by Secretary Aspen. So there's a lot of rhetoric about fiscal responsibility, but we know that one of the last things that George Bush said about economics that was really true was that it is voodoo to try to raise spending and cut taxes. That's what we did in the 80s. That's why we went from $1 trillion of national debt to $4 trillion in national debt under 12 years of Republican rule. We have to reverse that. Bill Clinton has put forth a plan, a credible plan, to cut the deficit by $500 billion over the next 5 years. There is no other credible plan out there at this point. It needs the support. Unfortunately, we will not get any votes from the other side of the aisle. The Democrats will have to do this themselves.
Okay, Mr. Booyer, can you talk about your position? I gather you're a no, and that every one of the Republicans in the House is a no. Is that correct?
Well, I think that is probably correct. Many of us hear this, and even my colleague just said that there wasn't a credible plan. There is a credible plan. And the reason they say this is a tough vote for them, it's a tough vote for Democrats because they can't decide whether or not they should side with Republicans and conservative Democrats or support the leadership of the Democratic Party and this president. So that's why it's a tough vote for them. I'm not going to support this. As we talk right now, there's testimony going on before the Rules Committee. What's going to happen is this Rules Committee is going to shut and close off the debate on one of the largest tax increases to the American people, and that is flat out wrong. So America needs to understand that the floor of the House of Representatives right now has become one of the most undemocratic institutions. This budget is going to cut Medicare, it's going to increase taxes on Social Security, and this BTU tax is flat out wrong and is inflationary and is a regressive tax.
Ms. Clayton, let me go back to you, and you're the president of the Freshman Caucus, are you not?
I'm the
president. Freshman Democratic Caucus.
That's correct.
Has a deal been struck now in the late afternoon of the eve of the vote on capping Medicare or making some arrangements to hold down the increasing cost of Medicare and Social Security?
Well, there's continuous conversation to make sure that the deal that is broached is as broad as possible, and there is some effort to have entitlement targets where they will not exceed spending. As you well know, entitlement is the area where the expenditure goes up uncontrollably, and some members of the Democratic caucus are concerned about that. And there is indeed an effort right now to make sure that that thought is addressed. Now, I think back to the Republicans who say indeed that they have had a responsible plan. I have not seen any plan that they are willing to take on entitlements one by one, but they're able to say cessation or automatic reduction without addressing veterans, without addressing Social Security. They'd rather have us do it. Their credible plan would have denied many people who have the entitlement. Entitlements mean, in fact, that as because of your certain condition, you are entitled to those benefits. Now, we need to find a way to control that, but that control need not to be an automatic control. We ought to have the guts to stand up and say, yes, we need to reduce, and part of that will, in fact, be, I think, achieved when we have health care costs.
Mr. Bonilla, are you in the position of opposing the energy tax at the same time you are in favor of capping Social Security and Medicare payments?
I am not. I am absolutely opposed to the energy tax. And
where are you on the other?
I'm thinking about that. I'm not committed one way or the other on that issue yet. And what's interesting is this tremendous battle within the Democratic Party itself. I'm delighted that some of the points that I'm making here about this tax, the BTU tax especially, being a killer, a job killer, is being understood by so many of my friends on the other side of the aisle. And this whole battle, although we're debating rhetorically here between parties, the real battle right now is going on within the Democratic Party. So they understand in many cases that this is like inflicting like having a self-inflicted political wound to themselves if they vote for this tomorrow. They're going to have to go out and answer that next year when, in fact, we see what the tax does to the economy, and they're going to have to be there. They're going to be holding that issue out there for people to look at, and I think that's very significant in this debate.
Ms. Shepard, you were one of 19 freshman Democrats who signed a letter that went down to the White House yesterday urging President Clinton to put in some more spending cuts or, short of that, to delay a vote. Why'd you do that?
I did that because my support is conditional on three things, which I have been assured will be in the package. Number one, that there is a budget deficit reduction trust fund, and I believe that will be there, and it will ensure that every tax we collect will go towards deficit reduction. Number two is a reduction in the rate of the BTU tax. And number three is a cap on medical expenses so that we can be assured that the next time medical expenses exceed what we expect them to hit, this will come to the attention of the President, and Congress will be required to be accountable for that. We need to make sure that we pass this resolution with this act with those things in it so that we can move to the next step, which is really the most important step of all, of passing health care reform. Because everything that we do tomorrow will be wiped out in a few years of health care inflation if we aren't serious and straightforward about reforming health care. And I want to just say one more thing. The BTU tax isn't so much as a job killer as it is a lobbyist victory. I would like to say to the American people that they need to know that we have to stop letting lobbyists write the laws of our land. The BTU tax is as fair as a tax can get. I wish we didn't have to pass a tax, but if we have to pass a tax, and if we can be assured it'll go into deficit reduction, this is the fairest tax we can get.
Mr. Hamburg, this morning the Washington Post in an editorial said that if Mr. Clinton's party deserts him tomorrow on this issue, that party, the Democratic Party, forfeits the right to be taken seriously on the national stage. What's your reaction to such a description as that?
Well, I think 120 days or whatever it is now is is a little too fast to judge an administration. But at the same time, there's no question that this is a very important gut check for the Democratic Party. I think it's a time in which Democrats have to decide that what the voters were saying in our elections was that they want the country to move forward, that they want to have hope about the future of this country. And that has been tied directly, I believe, by the electorate in this issue of the deficit. Of course we need investment. Of course we need to spend money on our children, our families, our jobs. And those are things that the president is very mindful of. But this country is focused in a very meaningful way on the need to cut spending and the need to deal with the problem of the deficit. This is a meaningful way to do that. The BTU tax is not wonderful, but when OMB Director Leon Panetta, known in the House, known among Democrats and Republicans as a very fiscally disciplined person, comes to our freshman caucus, our Democratic caucus yesterday and says, we looked at every other possibility. We looked at every other type of energy tax. We are a country that is 6% of the world's population using 28% of the world's energy. We have the lowest energy costs in the world. If there was somewhere that we had to go to raise some revenue to deal with this deficit, this was a reasonable place to go.
Mr. Bouyer, let me ask you what your prediction is for tomorrow.
Well, I don't have the crystal ball to say what the prediction is. I know there's a tremendous amount of arm twisting going, and it seems like the Democratic leadership is trying to pluck them off one at a time. And you know, there is some great deal of stress that my colleagues in the other side of the aisle are in. So I can't make any predictions. I know that it's a tough vote for them because they have great fears of what's going to happen in the Senate, and they're going to be held accountable on the vote.
What do you think of the president's leadership on this issue?
Well, I can almost agree with half of what Dan had said about, is this a defining vote for the president? He has made some trips and stumbles right now, and there's some people uneasy. Even the chairman of the own Democratic Party stated that just yesterday.
Mr. Wilhelm.
Yes, and I think it is defining for his leadership. It's also, you know, where I look at it as more important, though, is defining of leadership would be for conservative Democrats to stand up to this president and say, your BTU tax is hurting this country. I can solve this really quick. The BTU tax wants to raise $71 billion. He's doing that for new spending. New spending. That is because he wants to raise the earned income credit $28 billion and $7 billion for food stamps. We already have 28 million people on food stamps. I'll tell you what, we can come up with $71 billion real quick is cut the agency overhead by 4% over 5 years. There's $36 billion. Not increase the earned income credit by $28 billion. There you got your 28. Don't increase the food stamps by $7 billion. There's some more. Go privatize the TVA. There's $2 billion. You can add this up really quick and get $71 billion. We do not need the BTU tax and hurt rural American working families in this country.
Let me ask Ms. Clayton a question about President Clinton's leadership. Do you think the Clinton presidency has a problem right now?
Well, I think the president obviously has a critical point where he has to be able to rally the leadership of his party. But I think more than the president having a problem, I think the country has a problem. I mean, how long can we flounder up here? I think the example of the gentleman saying fiscal responsibility, I was impressed that all of his $76 billion came from those people and those programs he couldn't care. Food stamp has no compassion whatsoever because $7 billion for food stamp. Oh, how absurd. Give money to the poor. Again, earned income, working families. How absurd give them $28 billion. I mean, that's a classic example.
You like redistribution of the wealth theories. Those are the old
No, I
theories
don't.
of old
I like
Democratic
fairness.
policies.
I like fairness.
We want
I like fairness. The people of America.
New solutions to these problems that face this country.
He asked me, how about that? Look, fairness in this report.
Finish your statement, Ms. Clayton.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. I think, indeed, that there needs to be a fair sharing of it. The low income will share in the burden of the caps will be, certainly targets will be put there. Farmers are suffering. I'm from a farm area. All sectors of this community should pay the responsibility of this particular time. But why take the burden out on those working families? Why take the burden of those persons who are unemployed, who need food stamps? It would be tremendously valuable if we never spent a dollar for food stamps. But why make that election if you don't have the opportunity to put them to work?
Mr. Hammer, what do you hear from home? Your district is the north coast of California. Do you hear disquiet in your district about the Clinton presidency?
Well, I think that most of the people in my district still look at this situation as one of hope. The majority of my district voted for a new representative. They voted for a new president. And I think they felt that this was a president who had a new approach to the country's problems. My district is particularly interested in infrastructure development, in resource restoration, in programs for children and families. I really believe that President Clinton primarily was elected to create jobs more than he was to cut the deficit. But I think both issues are important. And I think what Clinton is doing here is proposing a reconciliation package that is the kind of balance that people in the 1st Congressional District are looking for. It balances spending cuts, it balances deficit reduction, it balances investment in the future of this country, and I think it's something that my congressional district looks to with a lot of hope and a lot of favor.
Ms. Shepard, in a final question, if there were not such things as $200 haircuts and the so-called controversy in the travel office, do you think the president would be having to fight such a tough battle on this budget bill tomorrow?
I do, and the reason I do is that Congress is doing a historic thing in following his lead. He is asking us to do something we have never done before. He's asking us to reduce the deficit, to cut the budget severely. He's asking us to invest money in working families who are not on welfare so that they won't ever be on welfare. He's asking us to reverse the entire way that this body has been thinking. He's asking us to change. It's very, very difficult for people to change. It's very hard for this body to change. And the most startling thing of all is that the fight within the Democratic Party has been over who can be most conservative, if you can imagine that. We've never had such a fight before within the Democratic Party. I believe that we will change, and I believe President Clinton is giving us an opportunity to do that, and I believe we all ought to stand behind this, including the Republicans, who really, if they are willing to be responsible, should care about the future as much as we do.
Okay, Ms. Shepard, thank you very much, and thank you, other 4 freshmen. We'll talk to you again when another crisis breaks on Capitol Hill. Robin?
Still ahead on the NewsHour, the problems of airlines and young black tennis players. Next tonight, an update on the airline industry. Since 1990, U.S. airlines have lost $10.5 billion. President Clinton has created a federal commission to study that problem, but the airline industry itself isn't waiting for a federal solution. It's taken matters into its own hands. And as Tom Bearden reports, you may not like the results.
This airport has no commercial airline service, but it's filled with jetliners nonetheless. This is Mojave, California, out in the desert about 2 hours north of Los Angeles. $1 million jet engines that once powered 747s across oceans now merely clatter in the gritty afternoon breeze. More than 120 jets line the taxiways. They're here because the airlines are shedding capacity almost as frantically as they tried to increase it in the 1980s, all in hopes of making a profit. Getting rid of old planes isn't all they're doing. Americans have just begun to tolerate hub airports, the ones the airlines take everybody to and make them change planes before going to their final destination. The profit crunch is forcing those hubs to evolve. Some people might be tempted to call it de-evolution.
And ladies and gentlemen, rows 10 through 33 are invited to board through the C-10 doorway.
Instead of a short walk down an air-conditioned jetway, passengers are increasingly likely to face a wind-blown hike across a crowded concrete ramp, accompanied by the aroma of burnt jet fuel. Instead of a sleek jetliner, more and more passengers will find themselves boarding a plane that may look a bit like a flying 62 Volkswagen. The big airline MD-80s and 737s that used to connect people who live in cities like Augusta, Columbia, Monterey, and Santa Rosa to the hubs are being replaced by propeller-driven planes flown by regional airlines. The airlines say they have to do it to reduce their costs. Big jets on short-haul routes burn money even faster than kerosene, particularly when they're departing with empty seats. There have been a lot of empty seats since the recession began. So the major airlines are turning over some routes to the regionals. They used to be called commuter airlines. Often they are wholly owned subsidiaries of the major carriers. The smaller planes have fewer seats and more closely match demand. They're also a lot cheaper to fly, and the people who fly and service them work for less money than their brethren at the big airlines. One of the places experiencing a shift to commuters is Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. American Airlines built a hub here 6 years ago. A lot of other airlines did the same thing in medium-sized cities in the late 80s. The first hub flight to Raleigh-Durham touched down on January 15, 1987, and the hub has yet to show a profit. Early this year, American CEO Robert Crandall started making noises about selling or even abandoning unprofitable hubs. A lot of people in North Carolina were very disturbed about that kind of talk, including Governor Jim Hunt. Hunt led a delegation of businessmen to Crandall's Dallas headquarters bearing gifts. They offered to reduce some fees, refinance some bonds. Former Airport Authority Director Smedes York was part of the delegation.
It was a savings of roughly $600,000 a year. I mean, it's not a make-or-break type of amount of money, but I think it indicated the interest that the authority had in cost savings.
The delegation also promised to boost passenger traffic through the hub. The governor had extracted pledges from local companies to throw more business Americans' way. In the process, he was criticized for soliciting business for Americans, which directly competes with the U.S. Air Hub on the other side of the state. To Raleigh-Durham's great relief, Crandall agreed to put off any decisions on the hub's future for 18 months.
Hello, Smedes. How are you? Glad to see you.
Crandall made a reciprocal visit to Raleigh in April and brought some gifts of his own. Among other things, $2 million worth of advertising over 3 months and free airline tickets so the Chamber of Commerce could bring VIPs to town to convince them to move their businesses to the area. The joint campaign is designed to build up the passenger base, to reach a critical mass of people and achieve profitability.
The governor of North Carolina came over to Dallas-Fort Worth and said to us, the community values the hub as much as you value the community. We were very encouraged by that. And the fact that Smedes York and many people throughout this community are willing to help us make the hub work says to us that this is a place where we can make it.
American hasn't been able to make any money at its hub in San Jose, California, either. Crandall apparently thought he might be able to get similar concessions from San Jose's airport authority.
Well, they asked if we were interested in doing something similar to what Raleigh-Durham had put on the table, and quite frankly, we were not.
Ralph Tonseth is the director of aviation at San Jose.
I personally don't think it's appropriate for us to offer any particular incentives to any particular carrier. We view them as all on the same playing field, and what we do for one, we do for all. So we're not prepared to do special things for any carrier.
What does Tonseth think of the chances of Raleigh-Durham's campaign succeeding?
If I had to put a guess on the line right now, I would say it will not. I don't think that this artificial effort to create a market can be sustained over time. I think the market either is there or not, and it's there because of a demand or a price, some reason. So I would say I'm somewhat skeptical of that.
But Raleigh-Durham officials believe their efforts have already borne some fruit. They think American would have dropped many more jet flights if they hadn't made the offer.
Let's give you an island window right up near the front, okay?
At San Jose, American has announced plans to discontinue 17 flights a day. But Tonseth doesn't think the decision not to offer concessions has anything to do with that. He says it's mostly because Southwest Airlines, which doesn't use hubs and offers low ticket prices, has been taking away Americans' business. If hubbing airlines are having difficulty making money, why is Denver spending $3 billion building the biggest hub airport in the world? There it sits, a building on the plains northeast of the city. For now, an enormous man-made dust bowl. It covers 53 square miles, twice as big as Manhattan. The controversial fabric roof over the main terminal building covers 32 acres. The smallest concourse is nearly finished. The largest will be twice as big, 1,100 feet long. The project began in the booming 80s when the passenger levels at already crowded Denver Stapleton Airport were increasing at double-digit levels every year. But traffic hasn't grown as predicted. It's actually dropped. Critics say there won't be enough revenue to pay off the bonds the city issued to pay for it. Jim DeLong is Denver's airport director.
Any concern in your mind as we watch this latest transition in the airline business that Denver built the wrong airport at the wrong time?
Absolutely not. Intuitively, you've got to ask yourself, how many new airports have been built in the last 20 years? The answer is one, that's Denver. Number two, what's been the total increase in passenger activity in the United States over the last 20 years? The answer is 100% increase, close to 400 million passengers a year. Number three, what does the term global economy mean? It means traveling greater distances, and you're not going to do that on a train or a ship. All of those things conspire together, in my judgment, to say we need many more new airports, not just Denver's.
Some industry analysts believe that Denver's new airport may need an infusion of federal cash for a few years until the industry recovers. If so, the airport has a champion in Washington. The project was the brainchild of former Mayor Federico Pena, who just happens to be the new Secretary of Transportation. Pena has no doubts about Denver International's viability.
Denver has a very strong, what we call origin and destination market, which other cities do not have. I think Denver has at least 12 to 14 million passengers, citizens who simply go from Denver to another city and back again, and that's a very strong base.
Pena is also shifting away from one of the key policies of his predecessors, their hands-off attitude toward the aviation marketplace. That shift may touch off still more turmoil in the industry. To understand, it's back to the boneyard in Mojave. Some of the planes here bear the names of airlines that don't exist anymore. This 727 once belonged to People Express, one of the low-cost carriers that popped up after deregulation and started the early price war. When People Express, Midway, and others of their ilk began to go down a few years ago, there was a lot of hand-wringing about the loss of competition. Many analysts thought that 3 or 4 big airlines would eventually run all the new entrants out of business through predatory pricing. But a funny thing happened on the road to oligopoly. The original low-fare carriers are being replaced. San Jose's Concept says one is already a formidable competitor at his airport.
I was fascinated this weekend, for example, to see in the paper that Morris Air is starting jet service to Fresno from here, 175 miles away, $39 each way, unrestricted. You compare that to American Eagle, which flies the same route with turboprop aircraft, and their fare each way is probably more like $100.
A few years ago, the big carriers would have matched or even undercut those fares and driven the upstart into bankruptcy. The Reagan and Bush administrations usually stayed on the sidelines while that happened. The Clinton administration appears inclined to protect the new entrants from the big guys. Secretary Pena recently intervened on behalf of tiny Reno Air when it was perceived to be under attack from major carrier Northwest.
There was a sense that Northwest Airlines was trying to essentially eliminate them in an unfair way. The Justice Department had indicated that it was going to start an investigation, and then I simply had a conversation with Northwest Airlines expressing our concern. To the credit of the president of Northwest Airlines, he said, give me 2 days to think about this issue, and he called me back and said, Mr. Secretary, we're going to withdraw from that market. We understand your concern, and we will respond.
Would it be fair to call that jawboning?
Well, jawboning is probably a nice term, but I think people now understand that this administration wants to support competition. We're very concerned about consumers. We want more airlines in our country to be successful. I don't want to see the day where we only have 2 or 3 major carriers in our country. I don't think that would be good for consumers. And so on a case-by-case basis, wherever it makes sense, and the facts are very straightforward here, we will step in and ensure that we have competition.
President Clinton has also stepped in with a new commission to study the entire aviation industry's problems. At the group's first meeting on Monday, the president said that progress in meeting key economic challenges like deficit reduction and technology policy could be undermined without a vibrant aerospace industry.
It is critical to building a high-wage future for America, not just in the states that are obviously affected, like Washington State, and we have some members of Congress from Washington on this committee, but throughout the United States. There's not a state, not a community in this country that won't be better off if we have a strong and vibrant aerospace economy.
The President's Airline Commission is due to report back in 90 days. Few observers believe that any commission can even begin to understand the basic issues in 12 weeks, much less recommend meaningful solutions. But the commission says it'll work hard to ensure economic health and competition in the industry.
Finally tonight, recruiting and promoting black tennis players. Sonia Steptoe of Sports Illustrated magazine reports that many of the young black athletes finding fame in the sport may also be setting themselves up for exploitation.
Even on the coldest days of winter, behind the graffiti-covered walls of this old Harlem armory, local children come to play tennis. It's one of the many community-based tennis programs that exist in black neighborhoods around the country. 12-year-old Jasmine Harrison has been getting free lessons at the Harlem Tennis Center since the age of 4.
I don't go nowhere else, so I come here, enjoy, play hard, try to get a college scholarship so I can go to college. And
what do you want to do when you go to college?
Okay, I want to study for being either a doctor, a veterinarian, or a tennis player.
So you might want to play pro tennis?
Yes.
Many more black youngsters are aiming for the top ranks of tennis, in part because of visible professional players like veteran Zena Garrison and up-and-coming star Malavia Washington. J.J. Jackson is one of the youngsters aspiring to be part of the next wave of successful black pros.
Well, I guess my biggest dream would be become #1 in the world and start winning the Grand Slams like the U.S. Open and Wimbledon.
Jackson is a product of the United States Tennis Association Player Development Program. The USTA is the governing body of amateur tennis. Since 1987, it has recruited and cultivated the country's top young talent. To help America regain domination of the sport, the USTA has also made a special effort to target black players, with the goal of finding future superstars. The last great black superstar in tennis was Arthur Ashe, who played in the 1960s and 70s. And the generation of athletically gifted black players that followed Ashe never gained recognition. Now, promising black players are beginning to get attention from tennis academy coaches, sports agents, and deep-pocketed corporate sponsors who are eager to dole out millions in endorsements. They want superstars who will not only win big tournaments, but will ultimately help them make money.
This may be the next great territory for exploitation.
Charles Farrell is president of an advocacy organization for black athletes. He worries that young black tennis players, like so many football and basketball players before them, aren't going to have a safety net when they fall short of their dreams of fame and fortune.
The black kid generally doesn't have that umbrella, that parachute to fall back gently to the earth with. Usually, when I see athletes come crashing to a halt, it's the black athlete.
You ready? It's a short ball. Great balance. Out of the air. That a girl.
12-year-old Venus Williams and her 10-year-old sister Serena are tennis's newest prodigies.
Have you thought at all about college? College, after I play tennis.
What about you, Serena?
After I play tennis, because after you play tennis, and you're playing at 30, and you won't have nothing else to do. You'll just be sitting around, and they'll just forget you.
So that's your plan, is it?
Yeah.
The girls learned the game from their father, Richard Williams, on cracked asphalt courts in Compton, California, near South Central Los Angeles.
We would love to see Venus and Serena set a new pace and go to college. That would be the only way that they could get something out of this game.
They already are getting some things from tennis. Their father, looking to take their game up a notch, pulled them out of junior competition and cut a deal with Rick Macy for free training at his Florida Tennis Academy.
Sure, many things they do right now are world class. Serena does things at age 10, world class. Venus at age 12 does stuff as good as some players in the top 5 in the world. Each day, her stock goes up more and more in my eyes.
In return, Macy earns notoriety as the girls' coach.
That's it. That's pro.
Richard Williams and his wife, Oracine, also moved to Florida, where their daughters now train, with rackets supplied by Yonex and tennis togs from Reebok. Though they're not pros yet, they enjoy the perks of pro status. And the coaches, agents, and sponsors who hand out the perks get marketing mileage out of their relationship with 2 hot prospects.
And when you have that sort of rush to succeed, I don't think that sometimes the person is really thought about. They're thought more of as a commodity. And of course, most commodities are made to be used up and thrown away.
The Super Show in Atlanta. It's a huckster's delight, where sporting goods manufacturers from around the world cut the deals that propel the $80 billion sports industry.
I think this is going to do real well anyway because of the color and the price point.
Every one of the teaching pros is going to get whatever racket they're normally getting plus one of these.
We're going to sell the other ones too, but that's going to be the one that's most talked about.
Richard Williams is there too.
Well, you guys are going to be pretty fortunate to have Venus and Serena.
To keep his daughters headed towards superstardom, Williams says he has no choice but to play within this system.
Yeah, tell me about your racket. You like to see my girls use your racket.
He teases Reebok executives with the notion that his daughters will soon join the company team.
It'll be Venus Williams, Serena Williams, and Reebok to the top.
Minutes after arriving at the show, he is surrounded by agents from the country's biggest sports management firms.
So what's your schedule? Because I got to go talk to.
Coyly, he plays hard to get, then deftly flirts with each of them.
How are you, man?
I'm fine. How are you? The entire industry is really exploiting their situation. Mr. Williams is very cleverly exploiting tennis. It's kind of a mutual kind of petting.
Sina Hamilton heads her own sports marketing firm and is the doyenne of junior tennis.
And then there are other parents who planned that if their children were precocious, they were going to get every blessed dollar they could. Now, that does not mean you're exploiting your children. But when does it get out of hand?
Yes, when does it get out of hand?
It gets out of hand when you don't know when to say no.
Well, that's hard to do when people are throwing millions of dollars your way, isn't it?
Right, particularly if you as a family have struggled to support that tennis.
And for many black families, supporting a child in competitive tennis is a struggle. So much so that they often have little choice but to enter into relationships with money-minded coaches, agents, and manufacturers. J.J. Jackson could never have become a top junior player without financial help. When he was only 10 years old, his parents struck a deal with the Gary Johnson Academy in Hendersonville, North Carolina. He would get free training. In exchange, the academy gets the promotional benefits of having trained a champion. And his father would work full-time for the academy, recruiting youngsters. By his senior year in high school, Jackson had to make a choice: accept a tennis scholarship to the University of North Carolina or turn pro. Jackson decided to turn pro.
College is still my dream for JJ. It's never too late.
His mother was disappointed. She wanted JJ to take advantage of the scholarship so he could continue to play tennis and still get a college education. But she and his father accepted JJ's choice, especially after an agent delivered Jackson a fat endorsement contract from Fila, a sportswear maker.
Well, I wanted him to have the money. I know in 5 years, a $500,000 contract. If he didn't make it out there in 5 years, at least he's going to have some money when he get ready to go to college.
When this happens, you say, damn. I wish we could have gotten J.J. Wish he had come to school here.
North Carolina coach Alan Morris
believes Jackson would have taken the Tar Heels to the top while benefiting personally from the college experience.
I regret that JJ's not going to have that opportunity to be a part of that. But at the same time, I really can't argue with the amount of money that he's going to get to turn pro, because that's what he wants to do.
No, I don't think I'm missing out on the college life. I think since the Sea Life deal came in, like I said, I wanted to be a professional tennis player, and this is going to help me achieve my goals. And if I don't make it on the tour, I can always go back to college and have a good time.
And that's where I think that the exploitation is most horrible, is that these people are not preparing themselves and are not being pushed by others to prepare themselves for something else beyond the sport that they're in. And that is blatant exploitation.
Are you worried at all that JJ's being used by them or that he's going to be exploited?
No, not a bit. They're giving JJ $500,000. And JJ haven't even proven himself on a pro tour. So, you think that's being used? I mean, nobody knows right now whether JJ's going to be a big-time player, but God. God is the only person that knows this. Fila is taking a chance on JJ. Mm-hmm. And I really want to thank Fila for doing this.
Still, athletic careers don't last a lifetime. The question is whether J.J. Jackson and these budding stars